Hi, I'm Laurel Fisher, one of 8 early literacy specialists at Northwest Regional Education Service District. Northwest Regional ESD is one of 19 education service districts in Oregon with a legislated responsibility to support school districts in continuous school improvement. Working across the region, I have the privilege of partnering with educators as they strive to improve literacy outcomes for all students. One of the most important lessons from the work you're going to hear about is this. Real change happened when we combined strong systems work, building a district-wide multi-tiered system of support for literacy, with classroom-level instructional coaching. We were encouraged by how quickly this approach led to the instructional shifts we were hoping for. Even more exciting, we saw students making reading gains faster than we anticipated. That visible progress helped motivate teachers and district leaders to continue refining and sustaining the changes. Now, my colleague Carrie Cowan will read, Becoming a Great Reader Doesn't Happen by Accident.
About 6 years ago, Stephanie Sparks noticed something. Her 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders were having trouble reading. Teachers were following the curriculum and students were trying their best. It just didn't add up. Around the same time, COVID-19 was spreading across the globe, engulfing communities in fear and shuttering schools everywhere. Stephanie, who was then working as an early literacy coach in the Astoria school district, was working remotely several afternoons a week. Accustomed to dashing between classrooms, she used the extra time in front of the computer to start digging for answers. She started reading about how the brain actually learns how to read, and kept coming across the same phrase, the science of reading. The concept refers to the reality that people don't just automatically become literate, but do so through a rigorous and prescriptive process. What she was reading didn't square with what she had been taught in her teacher preparation program in the 1990s in California. It also didn't match up with the curriculum her district was using. In 2015, the district had adopted a curriculum called Fountas and Pinnell from the well-regarded Heinemann Publishing Company. The curriculum, which teachers often refer to as whole language or balanced literacy, assumes children become readers without a lot of explicit instruction. The district's choice wasn't unique at that time. Heinemann made $1.6 billion in sales during that decade, and American public media found the majority of the country's largest districts had purchased products from that publisher during that time frame. She and Megan Goen, then a special education teacher, were convinced their schools needed to change course. They started with Kate Gore, the principal at John Jacob Astor Elementary School, where kindergarten through 2nd graders attend. Kate found their research and the accompanying presentation they had prepared for her compelling. Reading is really the most equitable part of education, Kate says. Ideally, kids learn to love to read, but we have to teach them to learn to read first. Astoria Superintendent Craig Hops came to similar conclusions about the need to shift to a science-backed curriculum. Stephanie says making changes like these takes buy-in from everyone in the district, especially the superintendent. It starts from the top, she says. With the support of their leaders, Stephanie and Megan began laying the groundwork for a curriculum shift. But even with that backing, buying a new English language arts curriculum is daunting for any district, especially for a rural one emerging from a global pandemic. They started off by writing their own small group curriculum based on a phonics program called Really Great Reading, a program that incorporates science of reading concepts. Then they rolled it out to general education and special education teachers to use. The process was cumbersome at first. Some teachers balked at changing methods after decades in the classroom. Others were relieved to find it was the curriculum at fault and not their own teaching. Word spread that change was afoot. Stephanie became the Director of Instructional Support in 2022. Astoria also assigned an instructional coach at Lewis and Clark Elementary, a 3rd through 5th grade school across Youngs Bay. The schools also used Title I funding to pay for 2 reading-focused teachers and 4 instructional assistants. Then in 2023, the Oregon legislature and Governor Tina Kotek took a microscope to Oregon's middling reading scores. The legislature allotted additional funding to help districts boost their performance. The Department of Education announced that every district in the state would be eligible for funding to improve early literacy. The state also required that every district submit the names of their curricula and assessment systems to ensure they met guidelines. With the $260,000 Astoria was awarded, the district added a literacy coach at the K-2 school, Astor Elementary, and bought a new curriculum, Core Knowledge Language Arts, and rolled it out during the 2024-25 school year. Charlotte Robinson, the Title I teacher at Astor Elementary, jokes that they wanted to burn the old curriculum, but without having to resort to fire, the team did remove every trace of it from classrooms. Stephanie and Megan are open about how difficult some of the changes have been. "We've been accused of killing a love of reading," Stephanie says, but they press forward and remind educators who were taught using older, ineffective methods that they're not at fault. "You were doing the best that you could with what you had at the time," Megan reminds them. "You can't blame yourself." The new curriculum, which is based on the science of reading, draws students in with gripping scenes of ancient civilizations like those in Turkey and Mexico, medieval hierarchies like the serfs, nobles, and clergy, the key innovations and inventions that helped humans take flight, the life cycle of the frog, and cultures and histories of Native Americans. Eleazar is a fifth grader at Lewis and Clark Elementary who is now reading at grade level after receiving Tier 2 reading instruction, which is reserved for a fifth of students who are not meeting reading milestones. As a third grader, his results on a routine assessment found he was falling behind his peers. The next week, he received a special invitation to come to Hogwarts Reading Room. His parents also received an individualized letter. There he found walls adorned with Harry Potter characters, including Fawkes, the Red Phoenix, Albus Dumbledore, the Wizard, and the magical Whomping Willow Tree, all hand-painted by educators. During these lessons, he learned how to sound out multisyllabic words and parse complex sentences. He looks back fondly on his time spent there with teachers and instructional assistants, trained specifically on building those foundational reading skills. He remembers using index card-sized whiteboards called syllaboards to break up big words and then sound them out. "That was really fun," he says. "I still want to go." Teachers there light up when they hear these sentiments because they've worked hard to remove that stigma from needing reading support. A fifth grader named Micaiah has made similar gains. She's now reading and writing after just 1.5 years. Marjo Hawkins, a literacy coach at the school, has guided her through the process of learning letter sounds all the way to reading full sentences using a high-quality reading intervention that's geared specifically for 3rd through 5th graders. The program is called Phonics for Reading and can accelerate a child's reading growth when it's delivered as intended. In 2023, about the same time Astoria was shifting toward the science of reading, Northwest Regional Education Service District was standing up early literacy support for districts region-wide. Laurel Fisher, one of the early literacy coaches at Northwest Regional ESD, remembers a whole crew of Astoria educators arriving in Hillsborough for the quarterly day-long training sessions on the science of reading she and her team were leading. The training starts from the beginning, introducing neuroscience concepts in order to explain how a child's brain actually learns how to read, and then moves into how educators can apply the concepts to their own classroom practices. That winter, Astoria invited Northwest Regional ESD to come present on literacy to every educator in the district. The morning session included a viewing of the documentary The Right to Read. Educators then read one of the seminal documents of the Science of Reading movement, Science of Reading, a Defining Guide created by the Reading League. The 40-page document outlines the basic components of strong literacy instruction, including that children have to develop multiple skills simultaneously in order to become proficient readers. The afternoon was reserved specifically for elementary teachers. There they learned ways to make their teaching more explicit, meaning each step is broken out, explained, and reviewed. They also covered the importance of using specific and consistent routines, like inviting students to practice in pairs, write down what they think, or spell out words in unison. They also encouraged teachers to make learning more interactive. For example, a gallery walk where students move around the room and leave comments for peers on large posters affords kids the chance to move around while practicing their reading, writing, and critical thinking skills. Stephanie says many of the teachers told her these sessions were among the best they've ever had. "It's practical," she says. The partnership took off that spring when Astoria decided to join the Oregon Response to Instruction and Intervention Initiative. The project, which is funded by the Oregon Department of Education, has been operated out of the Tigard-Tualatin School District for 17 years and shifted over to Northwest Regional ESD the previous year. Districts who apply to participate typically have relatively low literacy scores. At the time, just about a third of Astoria's students were considered proficient or highly proficient in reading based on a statewide assessment called Smarter Balanced. With the additional support from the ORTII and early literacy supports teams, Astoria gained new momentum in their years-long journey of changing the way students learn to read. Laurel and Carrie Cowan, a professional learning coach on the ORTII team, led the district's newly formed literacy team through a cyclical process of setting goals, collecting data, and evaluating progress. But the group's first order of business, setting a vision for their work, for Kate Gore, that part was easy. Without literacy, you don't have much, she says. Megan agrees. It's non-negotiable, she says. The team settled on the following. All students can learn to read and write, given high-quality instruction. During those first few meetings, they outlined the essential skills students would learn and what methods teachers would use. Cold calls, where students raise their hands and wait to be called on, are out. Group participation, where everyone responds to a prompt, is in. The group also learned how to think about and collect data differently. Laurel and Carrie shared examples of high-quality tracking systems, and the team created spreadsheets that would work for them. They also adopted a rubric they would use to track the district's progress in establishing a multi-tiered system of support in literacy, meaning teachers are assessing students regularly to make sure they are progressing as expected. Teachers now regularly receive individualized updates from the literacy team and know exactly how their students are doing. In just a few years, there are many visible signs of the changes that have been made. It's not unusual to see literacy coaches teaching lessons so teachers can learn new skills, or for coaches to count the number of times students get to speak or engage meaningfully with what they're learning. Dr. Anita Archer, a leading science of reading researcher, has found the more opportunities a student has to sound out, spell out, write, or read during a lesson, the more they learn. Gone are the days of a child hiding in the back dodging the teacher. Children are regularly asked to change seats to improve their engagement, use whiteboards to write words, and read in unison. Laurel and Carrie are still heavily involved in these literacy team meetings, sifting through assessment data, delivering tailored professional learning based on what the teachers need, and advising on how to integrate the new curriculum. But every year, Astoria educators have become more self-reliant. For the first time, they led their own core review meeting with Laurel and Carrie advising. That's the meeting where everyone looks at how each incoming class is faring. Astoria uses an assessment called the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills, DIBELS. That is essentially many small tests that can quickly determine which literacy skills a student shows proficiency in. The team remembers crying when they saw the results of a recent assessment. I teared up, Charlotte says. Megan says they frequently cry over data, but recently they've been crying happy tears, which is a change for them, she says. This fall is the first year they can compare students. What they saw shocked them. This year's first graders who'd been instructed with the new curriculum as kindergartners scored 17 percentage points higher than the first graders who hadn't on a nonsense word fluency assessment. That's a difference of about 18 students who can correctly sound out letters and a consonant-vowel-consonant combination at the beginning of the year. Those numbers have been powerful for everyone involved, Charlotte says. We have amazing humans making choices to teach kids, she says, of the teachers she works with. She reflects back that at first the shifts started small. When they trust you, then they start making bigger shifts, she says. Then the numbers come in. That's when you know it's working.